stay in the high school right here because this broke shortly after you and I stopped recording our Wednesday podcast. And this kind of brings up a lot of questions for me on this. Not necessarily that this happened because, look, man, teams being ruled ineligible because of an ineligible player have gone on forever in Texas sports. I mean, my gosh, folks locally, especially if you've got any ties to Marshall, you know, you're kind of in the firestorm of this at the front of the class. You know, go back to the 1988 football season with Dallas Carter and all of that mess that went on. That wasn't necessarily similar to what we're talking about here with the Grapevine baseball team. That was more of a, oh my gosh, that was more of just out and out crime on the streets, to be honest. But there was some talk of, you know, ineligible players and things like that. And everybody, that's well documented. But coming out on Wednesday, I mean, literally talking about the day of the first round starting. Grapevine, the defending two-time state champs in Class 5A were ruled ineligible because of an ineligible player. And when you read into this story, I mean, the story itself isn't dissimilar from a lot of things that come across with this nature. I mean, they had a player that was not living in their district or was not deemed to be eligible to live in their district playing for them. And to Grapevine's credit, they realized this. They self-reported to the UIL, and then the UIL, of course, did what they had to do and looked at it and saw that, that we can't let them keep playing. This kid's ineligible. He's played. So basically, they stripped them of all of their victories this year. But Grapevine was by and large the overwhelming favorite to win a third straight state championship. But it brings up the question to me, and the fact that this still continues to happen, it makes me wonder just how rampant this is that we don't know about. I'll give you the opportunity to answer that first. What are your thoughts? Of course, you're in local media, but you do have some responsibilities as far as working directly with the Marshall coaching staff and being a press box manager and things of that nature. What are your thoughts on the idea that this actually goes on a lot more than probably any of us really realize?
I mean, I have no idea. I mean, I could make my guesses, I guess. I'll say this. In no way would I be shocked. We know that people are doing whatever they can to find loopholes. We know they are. I mean, you see a kid, we see it in Marshall all the time, a kid that was playing for us one year and he's playing for somebody else the next year. And other school districts see that as well. And vice versa. We'll see some that happen the other way as well. So obviously coaches are always looking to kind of game the system as best they can, within the parameters of it. We probably, if we were to bring in some of the elite coaches in Texas high school football right now, they've all, within the parameters of the rules, figured out ways to game the system. But so I think that goes on. How much of it is outright breaking the rules, I don't know. I will say it's very reflective of our win at all costs. You've got to win, and that's what matters. Because now this one sounds like maybe they weren't aware of it based on what you just shared. So I don't know, but it is there is pressure to win, whether it's real pressure from the outside or pressure you've created on your own. We know by going to games the amount of pressure from parents. I hear parents and community members talk to me as sports director all the time about the coaching staff for a particular sport at Harleton or at Wascom or at EF or at Marshall or what have you. There's pressure to get out there and get it done. So I'm sure that can play into it. But boy, I tell you, especially if I had a team like this that was a favorite to win, I would be crossing every T and dotting every I and making sure there's not something, I'm not saying people are stupid, but this is something stupid. This is something that was controllable. I got to make sure that something like that doesn't derail us. And that's what happened here.
Yeah. And I know this goes on more than is ever found out.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot more that gets by the UIL than they catch.
Right.
You know, it's like it's the old adage, you're not cheating unless you get caught. And
Yeah.
of course, that makes no sense whatsoever, other than the fact that it kind of covers you when you're doing those kinds of things. But and again, all indications are, as you said, Grapevine handled this the right way. They were self-reported themselves when they found out. You know, and listening to some Dallas area media, there's a lot more that I think that kind of went on behind the scenes here with this, or some politics maybe that went on about the timing of when this was released. And well, here's what I'm trying to get to here. And I've talked about the culture of travel ball and select ball, and how that culture has grown over the last 30 years. And it kind of lends itself, not in the overwhelming number of folks who participate in this. I don't want anybody to think I'm, again, trying to bury travel ball, but there are a few instances where, as you mentioned, pressure, you know, if we supply you with all of this great pipeline of players who have done all of this travel and have played against all this competition, you better win with it.
Yeah.
And not saying this is what necessarily happened in Grapevine, but it does kind of open the door to, I believe, that adds more pressure to a baseball coach, particularly in an area that, you know, lends itself to depending on baseball championships.
Right.
And that gets into the whole question of why on earth would a adult go so far to this lengths to try to lift themselves up because of a high school baseball team. I mean, what does that do for you personally as an adult? And how far are we as fans willing to go to see that our high school team is successful?
Right.
And you see that in every sport. I mean, you kind of mentioned it in basketball, that there's why are all the obviously great collections of players always seem to go to the same schools? And we see this, we've seen it a little bit in football over the offseason if we've been paying attention. We've got kids from out of state suddenly moving into Texas, and they always seem to end up in the DFW area at certain schools. And I can just think of one specifically from Arkansas. I believe one of the top-rated high school quarterbacks in Arkansas, is now playing at, I believe, Duncanville. There is one of those at Duncanville or DeSoto. I can't remember which one it was. It was one of those, high state championship contending teams from DFW. Is there recruiting going on? How does that kid, in the vast scheme of things, end up at one of those places just by happenstance? Bottom line, this stuff goes on, and I heard it yesterday, I think, on a show I was watching, and this kind of hits the nail on the head. The UIL isn't going to call you out on something unless somebody reports you.
Yep.
UIL really doesn't have the power or the resources to investigate every little thing that they think they see. But if you get reported, then that gives them, all the ammunition they need to go in and figure this stuff out. And when they do that, you find out it's really not that hard to untrack what's going on.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate for Grapevine. I think it kind of puts a stain on the playoffs itself, because here's what had to happen in this thing. So it's Wednesday. You've got teams in that district already set to go play. Some of them literally getting on the bus to go to game one of their series. They get a call that Grapevine's been ruled ineligible. That shuffles the whole deck.
Yeah.
So the team that's the runner-up in the district now gets bumped up into the number one seed. So they have to play, it changes your opponents. a team that thought their season was over gets bumped into the playoffs. Now they're playing again, probably haven't practiced all week. It just throws everything into an uproar. And again, I go back to everybody that was involved and can remember in 1988, what all happened during that Dallas Carter playoff run. I mean, it was a week-to-week thing. You did not know who you were playing, and if you had lost it in the previous week, you didn't know if you were still playing, because it just, and so it's an interesting thing to think about. But let's not fool ourselves to think that Grapevine's the only one that gets caught up in this. It happens all over the state and all sports. So unfortunate for them, I know, but man, that's a tough way to have your state championship streak end for those kids. So
For sure.